Hello, I'm Chris.
And I'm Tom.
I'm going to shut the door.
I wonder why you'd left it open.
Hello, I'm Chris.
And I'm Tom.
And you're watching That Review Show. And this week we've been at the movies and we went to see Terminator Genysis.
Genysis. Genysis.
Genysis?
I look at each of you, and I see the marks of this long and terrible war. If we die tonight, mankind dies with us.
So Tom, what did you think of Terminator Genysis?
Yeah, it's good actually, yeah. Well, what about you?
I really liked it. Oh.
What?
No. Should we try that again?
Okay, let's try that again.
So Tom, what did you think of Terminator Genysis?
Yeah, I really liked it. What about you?
I thought it was really good. I'm not wearing my watch.
There's something wrong.
Yeah. So Tom, what did you think of Terminator Genysis?
It was quite good actually.
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah, I thought...
How is this?
No, about 2 minutes in I was a bit worried. 10 minutes in I was really worried. And then old Arnie showed up and I thought, whoa.
Uh-oh.
I've been waiting for you.
But then actually he wasn't horribly annoying. Must be a different timeline. But yeah, so should we discuss characters first?
Yeah.
And let's start with the Terminator in the room, which is old Arnie coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it was my big dread.
Yes.
I went into this film hoping to be horribly disappointed, just like Jurassic World, but it was a different experience, and that's partly down to the fact that he wasn't managed horribly annoyingly. In fact, that's the defining feature of this film.
Yeah, I think in terms of characters, you've got four main characters in it really. You've got the Terminator, you've got Kyle Reese, Sarah Connor and John Connor.
Of course.
And of those four characters, two of them I thought were done quite poorly, two of them I quite enjoyed, and one of those, I'm glad to say, was old Arnie.
Yeah.
I thought they used him really effectively. A few of his lines, a few of his sort of comic moments didn't work particularly well, but generally he was in top form, or fine form as a Terminator.
I think they used him just right, because in the Terminator and Terminator 2, which this film is based on, it ignores the following sequels to those. In those films, he was, in one way or another, a side character. He wasn't. He was sort of an important plot element, but he was never the central character that everything hung on. And I was expecting them to try and do that, and they didn't. No, he was there as a background. Pretty much a background character.
Supporting role.
Very much a supporting role when he was supporting at all.
He was the T exposition.
That's right, yeah. He has to dump expository dialogue on the plot, which was fine. It was just fine because they gave him the right thing to do.
Yeah, I know some people have taken issue with like, oh, why would that Terminator know so much about how to build time machines and things? But you can answer that simply with the person who programmed him knew he would need that information and gave him that information. Like, I'm not particularly worried about him knowing loads of stuff, because he's from the future and fine. We'll get onto the plot later, but there were loads of things in this film where you could pick it apart, but at the end of the day, it's a time travel, multi-timeline sci-fi movie. So loads of it, you can just say, it's just timelines.
Yeah. I mean, the key is that the character was dealt with correctly, although there were still questions unanswered at the end of the film about how that character came to be. The fact is, the way they used the actor of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the role, for the most part, other than the bad comedy, was good.
Yeah, some of his comedy was great. I liked, he keeps saying to Sarah Connor, have you mated with him yet? because he obviously knows that's what needs to happen for the future.
And so does she, in fact.
Yeah, and so does she. And that was, I quite liked that. I found that entertaining.
In fact, that's a nice segue into my problems with Sarah Connor. in that there was a sense of destiny that she had that felt like a kind of teenage written script.
Yeah, a lot of her lines, you can forgive them. A lot of her lines are, I know we're supposed to fall in love, but I really want to make my own choices. And it's fair enough, given the context, but...
Given the context, it makes sense, but the actual words used are really bad. And in fact, that's probably my only problem with the character. You only told me this evening, Chris only told me this evening, that the actress named...
Emilia Clarke.
Is the woman who plays Daenerys Targaryen. Now, I've seen the first series of Game of Thrones, and I really liked her in that, and I didn't realise until now, having seen the film, that this is the same actress. There were moments where I was like, oh, she even looks like Linda Hamilton. I wonder who this unknown actress is. She's really, she's good in the part, considering what the part is meant to be. It's not meant to be the original Sarah Connor.
And again, I'm going to defend this film because lots of people have said, oh, she looks too young, she's meant to be badass Terminator 2 Sarah Connor. But
she's had different life experiences because the timeline's different.
Well, and the thing you have to remember as well is although she looks like badass Sarah Connor from Terminator 2, she is actually Sarah Connor from 1984. So she's early 20s, and yeah, she's had a different experience in this film and has obviously trained up a lot sooner. But she is still, in the timeline, 12 years younger than Terminator 2 Linda Hamilton. So, again, I'm going to forgive it that. I'm going to give it a pass.
But, I mean, to be honest, overall, not a particularly interesting portrayal of Sarah Connor. She's not doing chin-ups like being hard-ass biatch that we get in Terminator 2.
Yeah, and talking of not interesting, you've got Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese.
So, can I briefly talk about Michael Biehn?
It's Bean,
Yeah, as in
I can't
pork
have
and
beans.
beans.
Yeah.
He's lean, he's mean, and he looks, I don't know, he always strikes me as some sort of like crack junkie who's desperate. He's got this sense of like hardness and wiriness and toughness to him.
And he
which
looks...
you don't get with this guy.
No, he looks like he's come from a post-apocalyptic future where he has to scrounge for food, whereas Jai Courtney is just like, I'm from the future, I have to eat rats for a living. And he and Emilia Clarke had zero chemistry.
Oh my god, you knew Kyle Reese and knew Sarah Connor. They had zero chemistry. I think that's the script's fault. It was written by a teenager.
Yeah.
Go on, what's the line she says to him?
Oh, when they go through the time machine,
Yes.
and afterwards she says, don't think that me holding on to you while naked meant anything.
That's an awful line. It's rubbish.
Yeah.
It's not what adults say to one another.
No.
To adults, that would be an awkward thing you just don't talk about, and the audience would have understood it anyway. It was like their romance was written by a teenager, and we're supposed to suddenly believe later on. He goes, because I'm in love with you. We know he has a fascination for her because he studied her because John's taught her about her.
He's supposed to be in love with Sarah Connor based on what John's told him in the future. That's established in Terminator 1. The problem with this film was Sarah Connor goes through the film saying to him, look, I know I'm supposed to fall in love with you, but I don't want to just do what I'm destined to do. And then at the end of the film when everything's okay, they basically like, oh, we can choose our own paths. So now let's be in love by our own choice.
So, do you remember the Divergent series Insurgent?
I'm trying not to.
Yeah, well, this actor was in that, and his romance was from that. It felt.
Do you know the scene from Insurgent that featured Jai Courtney that they should have put into this film but they didn't?
Go on.
Him getting shot in the face.
Yes. So anyway, yeah, that's sort of the thing. The style of original Terminator has gritty Sarah Connor, gritty Kyle Reese, and their romance feels like this sort of like passionate, desperate thing. In this, it feels like this very dull, teenage, pretty thing.
Literally formulaic.
Formulaic.
Because they know that they have to fall in love and get...
And it's not thrown into relief by him dying. Spoilers, he doesn't die in this film.
No, and neither does the Terminator.
Neither does the Terminator. Very annoying.
And briefly, this is one of my main problems with the film, and this is why I don't think it will be a classic like the first two, is that in the first Terminator, the love story between Sarah and Kyle is believable and it has heart. And in the second film, although it's a bit saccharine at times, the father-son relationship between the Terminator and John is really touching. And that scene at the end where John's begging him not to go is heartbreaking, and it works. This film, you've got both of those sort of elements. You've got the love story between Kyle and Sarah again, and this time you've got kind of a father-daughter between Pops, the Terminator, and Sarah Connor. And just neither of them feel right.
And I think a lot of these problems come back, and I always want to talk about this when I think about this film, and it's the certificate. Think of the romance in the first film. Okay, it's
Sex scene.
and there's a sex scene. It's not graphic, but it's all done through hands being clenched and held together really tight.
There's a bit of boob, but
A bit. In this one though, you have this like suggestive scene with her getting naked in shadow form against the wall, and it's to titillate the audience. And I was like, "You've got this wrong."
yeah, it was creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy. Even though this is a 12.
Carl Reese came across as a creepy voyeur in this one, whereas in Terminator 1 it's very clearly set up. His love for her is questionable because it's all based on a photograph and stories he's been told, but he really feels that love for her.
It's the audience.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the thing. I mean, the whole style of the film that's driven by these two characters is a lot more 12A and a lot more accessible and less the Terminator cutting his own eye out. I think their script was poor. They were kind of boring.
Yeah.
That didn't really matter overall though, because there were other things that made it good.
There was enough going on that was sort of a minor point. To be fair with this film, I don't think it's an amazing film. It has a lot of problems, but it had a lot of small problems that for me didn't break the film for me.
Right, whereas when we watched Jurassic World, there were a lot of small problems that were too big.
Yeah. Some people have really had a go at this film about the clunky fan service because they basically recreate the opening 20 minutes of Terminator and then obviously do a twist on it. And I've actually heard people say that it was done more, the fan service was done more tastefully in Jurassic World.
Wrong.
But I think,
Wrong.
at least in Terminator Genysis, the fan service is the plot. Whereas in Jurassic World, it was literally just, oh, look at the night goggles, look at the Jeep, look at the visitor centre.
Examples of this, right. So, there are lines delivered by Arnie that the character of Arnie that's been taught by John Connor in Terminator 2 said. And of course, Sarah Connor has then, it's implied, taught this Terminator that because that's what would happen, or what we would assume would happen. So when he says them, it's sort of not like going, hey, here's a callback. Yes, it is doing that, but it's also going, this is consistent reality. Whereas Jurassic World, the flare, like as soon as we see a goat in Jurassic World, a flare drops next to it, as if a T-Rex needs to be reminded using a flare, because that's what Alan did in an improvised move in the first film, to distract it. It needs to be reminded what a goat is to hunt with a flare.
Yeah.
And then she uses a flare, and it's just like, is flare the thing that controls T-Rexes? And then she throws it at the
Yeah. Mostly the Genesis fan service moments and callbacks fit in the context of the scene. There was one that I found really clunky where John Connor does the whole, it can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with, it doesn't feel pity, and that is it's a great line of dialogue in Terminator 1, but in the context of Genesis it was a really clunky moment, and I just thought, why are you doing this line?
John Connor, moving on to him, yes, there's that bad line. Overall, reasonably decent casting.
Yeah, I like Jason Clarke as John Connor. I really liked him. We won't go too much into spoilers, but I just thought the character that he played throughout the film, he played very well. I thought he was a good hero. He looked 80s action film rugged.
He looked like not all that handsome, which you'd expect a hero to be. He looked kind of dark. But that's where John Connor would be after going through the human-machine war. Like, that's cool. That's cool.
The one thing, actually, I will say about Arnie that irritated me, and I'm getting really nitpicky, is Sarah Connor's been trying to teach him to blend in, and he's doing all the funny moments from the extended Terminator 2 cut where he's trying to smile, and he's sort of doing the...
It is nice to meet you.
I've been trying to teach him to blend in. I know it needs work.
And I didn't think about this until a few days after seeing the film, but I thought, consider how much the Terminator learns in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
By the end of it, he's saying things like, I need a vacation, and I know now why you cry, but that's something I can never do. Whereas in this one, he's had 10 years of being taught to blend in, and he's still calling everyone, hello Sarah Connor, hello Kyle Reese. Every time he sees someone new, he says, nice to see you.
Yeah.
And it was like, they're quite smart, these Terminators.
The callbacks were only obnoxious when they were exploited for comedy, really.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
But they weren't Jurassic World level callbacks of just like, hey, look, I recognise that! That makes me like this film.
Like I say, apart from a couple of lines, most of the callbacks were in context and worked nicely.
Okay, so the plot is a big thing about this film. The plot is sort of the thing that makes it good and also is the problem.
Yes, we are now going to go into spoiler territory.
Yeah.
So if you don't want spoilers, skip to this time code.
No, skip to this time code. So the plot in this is both a strength and the sort of weakness of the film, right?
Yeah.
The plot is overall a big thing about Skynet essentially being an iPad app, which links your iPad, your TV, your car, everything together.
To nuclear weapon systems.
Essentially, yeah. Though the nuclear weapon systems are hidden from you, the end user.
Yeah.
So I guess this is John Connor's big point when he delivers this big bit of dialogue where he's like, everything is connected now, this is the problem of the world, and it's a bit shoehorned shoved in your face. That's the premise, and that's how Skynet manages to proliferate.
Yeah.
Of course, it does it in 2014. 2017. Yeah, oh yeah, it was in the future from now, not the past from now. That's fine, because they managed to resolve that's when Judgment Day happens, by Sarah Connor having had a different experience in her earlier childhood. Okay, this is where it gets complicated. The thing is, it's a massively convoluted plot. However, what they did in the film was spend the first 40 minutes actually interweaving it very nicely with the original narratives and allowing you, the viewer, who came in with preconceptions about Terminator and Terminator 2, to go, okay, and you spend about 15 minutes horribly confused, and that's then resolved straight away.
Yeah.
And that was good of them.
Can I put in a big if?
If
If you've seen the first two films.
If
you haven't seen the first two films, you will be horribly confused for about 45 minutes, and then you can just enjoy the action that takes place.
And that's the thing, they did spend the time trying to interweave it. They spent time going, this is part of this is now part of a trilogy, I suppose, rather than a 5-film series. And here are all the links. There are some things that necessarily don't really link up, but they're minor. And so you as a viewer coming in going, I'm expecting this to be such a ruination, just like I did Jurassic World, you kind of come away going, actually, it worked, logically.
I really enjoyed the whole Terminator 1 being flipped part of the film. I really enjoyed that. There are a couple of action scenes that I felt were overlong, or there were too many crammed in at one point.
Yep.
But generally
there was nearly an hour of this film though where there was no action.
Yeah, the first 45 minutes of the film I really, really, really liked, and the rest of the film was okay. It was a good action
movie about Skynet becoming the iPad.
Yeah. But to go into the spoiler territory, if you've seen the trailer, this will be nothing new to you, but John Connor has become an evil robot. As Carl's getting sent back, you briefly see John being attacked, and Doctor Who comes
John Connor is no longer John Connor in the film, essentially. He becomes a Skynet avatar.
T-1000-esque.
Yeah, T-1000 but made of nanomachines rather than made of liquid metal. So,
yeah.
First bit at least set it up to be part of the originals. That's why I was happy.
Yeah, I mean, issues that I had with the film was they defeated John Connor, the supreme ultimate Terminator, with magnets. They hit him with magnets repeatedly. And I had a couple of issues. There were a few bits of the plot that were really confusing and don't get resolved, and then there were a few bits of the plot that were horribly obvious.
Yes.
So like when they walk into the Cyberdyne building, there's all this liquid metal being formed into the shapes of people, and Sarah says, are they safe? And Pop says, they cannot sustain their shape without the CPU. At that point,
he's the only person in there with a CPU.
I was like,
so
right.
When he falls in, we know he's
someone's CPU's going in there. I thought it was going to be John's CPU, and then it would become a giant T-1000. But actually, the Terminator dies, but gets thrown into the liquid metal, and you get a shot of it sinking into his head. And at that point,
back to the certificate. In an 18 film, we can see the human that we've cared about die at the end. In a 15 film, we can see
the Terminator
that we've loved die, and in a more heroic way, rather than this brutal way you see Kyle Reese die in the first Terminator film. You can have that. In this film, neither of them die. In fact, one of them half dies and then comes back, and the other one just comes nowhere near dying at any point. And it's just dull.
Can I just say that actually I've just thought of another point that confused me. There's a point where Sarah and Carl travel through time, and the spot they're supposed to land in, by the time they get there, there's been an interstate built, like a freeway, and John gets hit by a moving car that must be doing about 50. He gets sort of...
No, Kyle Reese does.
Sorry, Kyle Reese,
Yeah, they get run over by a car. I remember at the time being like, who got all their bones broken? Because we had a big crunch.
But he's just absolutely fine. He's got like a
they're
little...
fine. They get hit by a car. They get like run over.
Properly,
Like smashed.
So there are a few little moments like that.
Okay, because he was all like hypered up over her holding on to him naked.
There are a few moments like that. There are a few moments with helicopter chases and buses flipping, which I found a bit over the
I like
top.
helicopter chase. It felt like an 80s movie.
But it wasn't 80s helicopter chase, though. It was them all flying sideways along the sides of buildings, and you're like, helicopters don't really do.
What would you rather, Roland Emmerich's Godzilla?
74 helicopters shooting at each other as they pile down between the... Yeah, why in that film, when they're chasing a giant...
Talking about Godzilla now.
Yeah, why when they're chasing a giant monster, are they not flying above the buildings and just going, oh, he's down there, rather than flying in between them all?
I don't want to answer that question. So, the biggest plot hole, of course, is that Sarah Connor has had a different timeline, and that's because she was attacked by a T-1000 when she was young, unlike what we saw in Terminator 2, where John Connor is attacked after he's born, and Sarah's never seen the Terminator. Oh, no, except the... Okay, so when she's young before she sees the Terminator, the first Terminator, yeah, of course, because that's where our film starts, she's already been attacked by a Terminator. And we don't know where that comes from, and we don't know where Pops came from to save her, which is what he does. So that's the big question of the film. Where did Pops come from, and where was the first attack on her coming from? And the film does sort of at the end go, there are some unanswered questions, but we do know there's hope for the future. And I'm like, yes, that was the question I've been asking for literally 3/4 of the film.
See, I give the film a pass on that because they do address it in the film. Kyle says, well, because he's obviously scared of the Terminator at first. Where'd he come from? And they say, we don't know, those files were erased. And Sarah says, whoever sent him...
That's not addressing it, that's ignoring it.
No, I think actually that's a fair point, because they don't want Skynet to, at some point, gain the information about who sent Pops back from the future and then kill them in the future so he doesn't come back. So I was okay with that. But I did expect it to be resolved.
This is no longer just the genre of an action movie. This is now the genre of an action mystery movie. Because we start off going, oh, why is the timeline different? It forces us, the film requires us to ask those questions to be engaged and to enjoy it. And then there's this big one that isn't.
Yeah.
Not even towards the end. So that's a problem.
And there were a couple of things like Kyle has dreams from an alternate timeline because when he went back in time he hit a nexus point in the timeline.
We're going too far into it. That is a problem too.
John sent me here to save you.
I know, but we already took care of him.
Weak.
What?
Weak.
What?
John sent me here to save you.
What?
Weak.
I know, but we already took care of him. What?
So to summarise, the plot is horribly convoluted, but for people who've seen the first 2 Terminator films and not the following sequels, like me, it's great because it spends about 40 minutes working those old films and this new film together. For you, you'd seen the old sequels that aren't this sequel.
They're not canon anymore.
Terminators 3 and 4, and this is Terminator 5 that overwrites 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those because I didn't want to. I watched this one because I thought I didn't want to, but actually I quite liked it.
Yeah, I went into this expecting I would absolutely hate it. From the trailer, everything about the trailer upset me. But actually I really enjoyed it. It has huge problems, but I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much, and this doesn't necessarily mean it's a great film, but one of the reasons I enjoyed it was because it didn't insult me as a Terminator fan. It didn't say, you know those 30 years you've been enjoying Terminator films, well, forget all that.
Yeah, it didn't do that. No, it went, remember that, okay, let's bring you in slowly. It took its time. This film is worth the ticket price if you've seen the first 2 films and liked them, and you want to watch a dumb action movie that works in conjunction with them but isn't as good.
I'll be back.
What?
I would say it's a great action film with Terminators in it, but I wouldn't consider it really a Terminator film.
I would say I'd consider it a Terminator film, but it's not a great action film.
High five.